and welcome to this Q&A video. It's been something that I should have done a long time ago because quite many of people have asked me to do some kind of Q&A, but I finally got around to answering to some of the questions that people have sent me throughout the years. And yeah, of course it feels amazing that there are so many people out there who listen to my music and are interested in hearing more about the background and how the music came to be and so on. So of course I'm glad and honored that people are interested in what I do and are enjoying the material that I publish from my studio. So I picked a few questions that I felt are sort of like important and interesting, and I haven't really thought how to answer them beforehand, so I try to just answer as naturally as possible. And as English is not my native language, I think the flow might be a bit awkward at times, but I try my best. So, without further ado, the first question that I thought is interesting is what inspires you? And it's a really good question because inspiration is something that, for me at least, is quite a fleeting thing. Sometimes I can have like weeks or months even that I don't really manage to create anything of value, and sometimes I can find that I have days where I am really creative and seem to have like a really good flow when it comes to creating art and music. But as much as I've tried to sort of like analyze and think that what would be the way for me to sort of like get inspiration whenever I want, I haven't really found a way. So it feels like it's sort of like a thing that just flows, and there are like times when it doesn't flow and there's not much to do about it. But of course there are some things that usually are involved in those inspiring moments, and for me they can be like, of course, other music. Sometimes I just feel really strongly about some tune I hear, or some sound I hear, or some atmosphere I hear. It can be in film or television series, but it can be also just like a random thing I pick up when I just walk or something. So it can be really trivial things sometimes also, like nature or some like situation where I have a good conversation with somebody, or so yeah. I think I'm not really visual person. I think that for me the audio or what I hear is sort of like, it has always been an important part of my experience. So I'm really interested in sounds in general, and also like how music is layered, what elements does it build on, and so on. But yeah. Second question, which is quite popular, is that do you have other hobbies or interests in your life besides writing music? And yeah, especially when I was younger, I was really interested in Asian martial arts, and I practiced traditional kung fu for quite a few years. I've been interested in like just learning how to move with body in general, so I've been dabbling around with like gymnastics and handstanding and walking on hands and this kind of basic acrobatics kind of stuff, and calisthenics and Olympic rings, and it has been really fun way to learn how to move and how to be more comfortable with your own body. Other things, role-playing games. I've always been kind of a nerd. I read Lord of the Rings first time when I was like 6 years old or something, and started playing Dungeons and Dragons around that time as well. So yeah, but in the past years it's been a bit more. I haven't had that much time with hobbies, so currently the main thing is just music. But yeah. Then a question, how did you get the idea to be a composer? I think when I was a teenager, I was mainly just like playing piano and playing guitar and listening to a lot of music. And then I sort of like realized that, okay, it is possible to do something with computers. And as I was quite a nerd, then I remember that I fiddled around with the idea of should I learn how to make music with a computer, but back then the tools were really not that good and you didn't easily find good sound libraries, so it was sort of like just something that I every once in a while thought of checking out but never got around to. But then I think it was something like 2004 or 2005 when the technology was quite mature already, and I found Cubasis, which was like back then one of the simplest tools with which you can create music, and I installed it and found like these sound fonts and quite raw and crude sound libraries back in the day, and started just like fiddling around at what can you do with these tools. And that was how I somehow just randomly started producing at home, and it just sort of like got more and more serious from that moment. So bit by bit I started to create more and more music and invested in better tools. So it was sort of like a natural process in a way. And of course soundtrack music has always been one of my favorite music styles, so it has always been something like that I gravitate towards, how to do soundtrack music especially. And we get to the next question, what music do you listen to? So yeah, naturally soundtrack music is something I really much enjoy. Of course Hans Zimmer, you can't really skip him, but Vangelis has been one of my favorites, and there are lots of Japanese composers like Taro Iwashiro, Taku Iwasaki, Joe Hisaishi. Yeah, so lots of good composers. Then I also like to, back in the day when I was a teenager, I really enjoyed listening to like 80s new wave and gothic rock, like Fields of the Nephilim, The Cure, Joy Division, Bauhaus, Love Like Blood. Then at some point I got into progressive metal music and Dient, like Periphery, Animals as Leaders, Tesseract, Monuments, David Maxim Michik, and then jazz fusion like Alan Holdsworth, Pat Metheny, Mike Stern, John McLaughlin, and ambient music like Brian Eno, John Serry, Steve Roach, Global Communication, Biosphere. In general, I think I sort of like aim to have like really broad music taste. There are very few genres I don't enjoy at all. Usually I don't really get like this overproduced commercial pop music, because for me it's a bit too easy to predict. It's sort of like, yeah, for me I usually look for something interesting in the music itself instead of just like that it's good to dance, or it has this party feeling. So for me, that's like sort of boring. Even if it's made well, it's sort of boring. So for me, the music I listen to is usually somehow emotional and interesting and a bit weird, I guess. Yeah. What are your favorite film or video game soundtracks? Yeah, this is a good question. From film side of things, for example, from Hans Zimmer, I really enjoy his work on The Thin Red Line, which is, in my opinion, a bit different from his usual works. It's not that epic. It's more like cinematic and flowing and sort of like a bit minimal in a way. It's really good, good soundtrack. And then from the Japan side of things, like from anime and Japanese movies, Joe Hisaishi's works on Miyazaki films are excellent, like Princess Mononoke. And Takui Iwasaki has done a stellar job on Genshin, original video animations. I really love his works. And Taro Iwashiro has done excellent work on Onimusha series. And then of course from the darker side of things, like Dark Souls 3 has excellent soundtrack. And then from the minimal side of things, Austin Winter is really good composer, and his work on Banner Saga is excellent. And I love Mark Morgan on Place Game Torment. And well, Baldur's Gate 2 had a really good from Michael Hoenigan. And of course Jeremy Soule from Morrowind and Skyrim. And yeah, there are really lots of stuff. Steve Jablonski does really good hybrid modern soundtrack music, and then Johan Johansson, who did like, I think he did Arrival and Departed series. Yeah. Then what programs are you using to compose music? Well, I have a few videos up on my YouTube channel where you can see like a screen share of my production system. But yeah, basically I use Cubase 9 from Steinberg, and then I have lots and lots of different sound libraries. I don't use hardware at all. I just use MIDI keyboard, and then I just play everything with it to MIDI, and then I just route those MIDI notes to the actual sampler libraries. And throughout the years I've just purchased lots of different. Currently my favorite ones are Spitfire Albion series, and of course Native Instruments Contact is the main thing that I use. East West Quantum Leaf has lots of good stuff. 8DO, especially their choirs. But yeah, lots of different stuff. I'm still wanting to get Metropolis Arc. I think that might be something that I really want to get my hands on. And would you consider making compositions based off the books you've read? Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot, and very often I actually got inspired by some of the books that I've read, but it hasn't been like that clear. But sometimes I've thought of doing some kind of concept release, that I would make a few tunes that would be especially for certain characters or certain storyline. But I haven't really gotten around to it yet. But for example, one of my favorite albums is Mike Oldfield's album Songs from Distant Earth, which was based on this skiffy classic from Arthur C. Clarke. And it's one of the best albums I've heard, and I actually listened to it when I read the book, so it was really nice experience. So it's something that I really would like to do someday. And then the last question for at least this Q&A is, what do you think are the most important things in life? Well, it's a big question, of course, but well, especially in the past few years, I personally have sort of like processed quite a bit of stuff in my own life, and through that process I've sort of like realized that one of the most important things, for me at least, when it comes to being a human being, is to learn how to recognize and name and label your emotions and feelings in your everyday life and in every moment, without hesitation and without shame and without anything that blocks the whole idea. Because personally, I think that most of the problems we humans face usually are related to the fact that we either don't recognize and label our emotions at all, or we mislabel them. For example, that we don't realize that we are angry, or we don't realize that we are sad, and we think something else entirely, and then we just wonder that why is the life so hard in general. So I think that is maybe one of the most important things that a person can do, to learn just to recognize your own emotions better and better, and not to spend your life just wondering that why everything feels so hard. And tied to that, the other side of the coin is that when you get better at that, you have to learn how to communicate better with others, and not to let others either control you or force you to do something that you don't really want to do. So you have to learn how to respect yourself, and through that way also respect others, and take sort of like, in a certain level, take control of your own life without being a passive kind of a victim of the circumstances, and rather be an active force in your life, and really try to answer that which direction do you want to go with your life and your actions, and make it your life, instead of just waiting for something to happen or wait for something to change. And of course, all this is tied to circumstances, and the sad thing is that there are lots of people who just happen to have so bad circumstances that all of this is really, really impossible before the circumstances change in some way. So for me at least, it feels like this sort of kind of right-wing rhetoric where everything is possible if you just work hard enough. That doesn't really resonate with me, because I personally think that for each person who really works hard and then gains success, there are myriad of people who work at least that hard, but for some reason or other they will never get the success they deserve. And that is basically because the circumstances aren't there, or they have bad luck or something. So for those people, in my opinion, it feels harsh to just say that you have to try harder, because they have tried really hard. So yeah, all in all, I think that at the same time life is quite chaotic, and there is lots of stuff that we can't control, but the things that we sort of can learn to control, or learn to at least know, is what is going on inside us. And if we learn that, then we at least have sort of like a better possibility to live our life like better. Yeah, a bit complex thing, but that's at least at this moment something that I sort of like think. But yeah, hey, thank you for this Q&A session, and I really hope that you continue enjoying listening to my music. I will be producing more, and see you around. Thank you for being a listener so far, and I hope we continue our relationship. Cheers.